Hey folks, welcome back. This weekend is a slightly different birding mission. We've set ourselves a bit of a challenge as it's quiet for rare birds this time of year. So we're going to try and see and photograph, so both of those, as many species of British birds as we can before about lunchtime on Sunday.
This video is a big day birding photography challenge, so we headed off on the 5-hour journey down to Suffolk. When we arrived, it was the early hours of the morning, so we went straight to bed. Good morning, we're at Snape Warren in Suffolk, starting our big day-ish birding. Yes, yeah. So we're starting now, it's about 7:15. We're gonna try and get as much footage, photos or videos of as many species of birds as we can before about lunchtime tomorrow. Last time we did this, I checked this morning, we did 58 species, so we really want to beat that this time. It doesn't seem very much, but it's easy to see birds and not so easy to photograph them sometimes with video. So stick with us, we're going to try and get as many as we can. I've already had a wood pigeon, so there's a start. Snape Warren is an area that's looked after by the RSPB. It comprises of some woodland and a large area of heathland, which is home to a large variety of species. After walking through the woodland and into the heathland, one of the first birds we came across was a linnet. These birds are reasonably common in this environment. Another bird we saw and heard a lot of was the chiffchaff. These birds were pretty common almost everywhere we went in Suffolk. Another reasonably common heathland bird is the stonechat. We walked deeper into the heathland and came across a bit of a crossroads with a few trees and heard the unmistakable sound of a great spotted woodpecker. Upon further investigation, we found there were a few of them there, so we watched them for a while interacting with each other. Before then, wandering a little bit further up the path to this amazing view. On the walk back, we saw a few more birds in the heathland, like this dunnock and this very vocal whitethroat.
Hey, how's it going? We've had a bit of a walk before breakfast. When I say a bit of a walk, it's probably like an hour and a half or something. But I've picked up a few birds, a probable Dartford warbler, which is great. A bit of a silhouette, but hey ho. Either skylark or woodlark. It was a bit of a distance. Some of the normal stuff like wood pigeons and jackdaws and whatnot. Anyway, we're going to go to the van, get ourselves a bit of brekkie and head somewhere else. Although we don't know quite where yet. Stick with us.
Around the area where we'd parked the car, there were a few other birds, like this pied wagtail that was perched on telegraph wires. There was also, at quite a distance, a greenfinch singing in the top of a tree. Another bird we'd heard and I had struggled to get a photo of until now was the yellowhammer. And very far in the distance, this goldfinch was singing at the top of another tree.
I'm cooking.
You're making yourself some brekkie?
I am.
Excellent.
Made you brekkie.
After breakfast, we headed to RSPB Minsmere. This is a pretty big reserve and one that we'd visited last time we were in Suffolk, although very briefly. After chatting to the very helpful and knowledgeable staff in the reception, we headed out into the reserve, past the sand martin colony.
Hello everybody, we're at RSPB Minsmere. Last time we were in Suffolk we nipped in briefly, but today we're going to have a slightly more extensive look to see how many more species we can add to our kind of big day list.
Oh, it's pretty.
And it is a very pretty reserve. Bear with us, let's see what we can find.
The first hide we visited was East Hide. As we'd heard, there were plenty of waders here, and looking out from the hide there was plenty to see, like this black-tailed godwit. It was among a number of these birds, some in their red summer plumage, this one not so much. There were lots of birds around with young too, like this pair of barnacle geese. We watched them for some time, wandering around with their chicks looking super cute, following them around. These geese weren't the only ones with young. In the distance there were some Canada geese with some slightly more grown up young. And then on another piece of bank in front of us there was some grey lag geese. These were some quite young goslings. Further out we noticed an island with a very noisy colony of common terns. These birds here don't seem to have been quite as affected by avian flu than some of the reserves we've been on, which was great to see. Another collection of terns that were there, which I was super happy to see, was a little tern. These birds are really quite rare near where we live, with only one breeding colony that I'm aware of in North Wales. There were a few gulls present, the most common, as normal, being the black-headed gull. These gulls, although the commonest, have been affected severely by avian flu. One pleasant surprise that we saw was this pair of little gull in full summer plumage. Please excuse the footage being a little bit blurry, there was a lot of heat haze. These birds don't generally breed in the UK, with the nearest breeding colony being in Norway. So this was a real treat. One other bird we thought was a little bit unusual to see in this environment, although we were told later on by one of the RSPB team that they frequent here because they breed nearby, was kittiwakes. There were two of them roosting on a wooden perch. A little bit behind where the little gulls were was a sandwich tern with a youngster, the youngster pestering the adult for food. The one bird we'd been told about in reception and that most people on the reserve were trying to see was the spoonbill. There was one here that had been roosting for a while and then got up to have a bit of a stretch and a wander. Although at the moment not as rare this time of year as the little gull, this seemed to be the star of the show. As I had to continue with the challenge, trying to get as much footage of as many species as possible, despite the heat haze, I got some shaky footage of a few birds, like these lapwing that were roosting on the far side. Also, just in front of them, the shoveler that was preening. A little bit forward of the shoveler on another bit of land, there were some cormorants. And wading off to the side was another bird that we don't always expect to see at this time of the year, a ruff. Coming closer in, there was a moorhen dabbling near us. A bit closer, there was a coot feeding. And near that coot, there was one of the many avocets that were here, feeding right in front of us.
Hello. Right, we've been to East, I think it was East Hyde, wasn't it? Minsmere, and it was extremely productive. With lots of birds, including little gull, which was a bit of a rarity at this time of year. Little tern, spoonbill, all sorts of cool birds. Kittiwakes, yeah, a couple of kittiwakes, a couple of ruff, all sorts of different things, so that was cool. Heading out to Bitten Hyde and hope to see, guess what? Bitten.
We climbed the stairs up into the Bitten Hyde to look over the vast area of marsh. There were a few other people in the Hyde. Initially it was pretty quiet with not many birds about. Before long things changed and we started seeing some marsh harriers. Initially gliding separately across the marsh hunting, and then finally 3 or 4 of them came together. I suspect this may be a family unit. This was great to see. One bird I was hoping to see here was the bittern. These birds are notoriously secretive and very well camouflaged. But with the help of one of the other birders very patiently pointing this bird out to me, I was able to see a bittern hunting with its head sticking out from behind some reeds. This, although quite a distance, was an amazing bird to see, and I was very happy. On the way back to the car park, I clocked up a couple more species, a chaffinch, and also this blue tit that were feeding near some bird feeders. But now it was time to move on.
Hey folks, been to Minsmere and that was pretty good, I would say. So hey, we saw lots of things.
including a bit now, which was excellent. Now we've decided to do some general kind of birding local to Minsmere in places we've seen, things like nightingales and such before. See what we can find. I don't think we're at the right time of day for nightingales, but I can hear a lot of other birds around, so stick with us. We may find a few more to rack up the numbers.
We took a walk through some woodland on to Westleton Heath. At this point it was mid-afternoon and it was very hot and humid. We walked for quite a while. We heard some birds but didn't see very much at all. So we decided to head back to the van and try elsewhere.
Hey folks, I'm on Westleton Heath. We've had a bit of a walk. It seemed to be quiet for birds. There's a few birds singing but not many. I haven't been able to pick any out or get any footage of anything really. It's a very pretty place though, with an interesting kind of quarry-like feature in the ground. I think I saw a woodlark before and a few warblers, but I didn't unfortunately get any footage. So anyway, onwards and upwards, and hopefully it'll get a bit busier for birds as it gets later in the day. Stay with us.
After consulting my birding app, I took a drive to Carlton Marshes Wildlife Trust.
Hello people. We're at Carlton Marshes. It's a Suffolk Wildlife Trust place where, well, we've been told there's a ringneck duck here. So we've seen one before, a female. This is a male, but it's in eclipse.
It's also not a British bird.
It's also not a British bird, but I'm counting it anyway, if I get footage of it. So anyway, it looks a really nice reserve. Look at all those swallows on there. Yeah, stick with us, this is cool.
There were many swallows in and out of a dead tree. It was an amazing thing to see. They were coming down to the water to drink. Walking along the marshes, we saw this mallard duck, had a brief view of this pheasant. Walking further down the path, there was a little bit of open grassland where there was this lovely deer. Getting towards the water where the ringneck duck had been seen, we saw a little egret. A bit further on there was quite a number of mute swans, some with cygnets. Thinking we were getting close to where the ringneck duck was, we bumped into another birder who pointed us in the direction, which was miles away. So we carried on walking, eventually coming across another birder who was looking at the duck. We peered out onto some water and it was at the far side, at quite a distance, diving amongst some weeds. This species is an American visitor, and one that seems to be increasing in frequency. We had in the past on another video seen a female. This bird is a male, although not the best example as it was in molt and kept getting covered in weed. After finally being able to view the ringneck duck, we started heading the 3 or so miles back to where we'd parked. On the way back, getting a glimpse of this lovely Egyptian goose, which, although not so common where we live, are reasonably common here. Now considered a British bird, this species originates from an introduced population in the 17th century that has since escaped and bred. Whilst on our journey back, we saw a flock of starlings that were flying in between a load of cattle, presumably feeding on insects that the cattle had disturbed. And just before we got to the car, not only did we get an amazing view of this wonderful hare, I also managed to get a brief photograph of a very flitty but noisy reed warbler.
Hey folks, we're back in the van. The trip to Carlton Marshes was pretty successful. We got the ringneck duck, although it was quite a distance and a bit scruffy because it was
Covered in weed.
Because it was covered in weed and it was in molt. But we got it. We had to walk like miles. We did see some other cool stuff though, like an Egyptian goose and some other bits and bobs. Anyway, we've moved on from there about half an hour south to Fredericks Mount, which is a place where last time we were here we saw nightjars when it was going dark. So we're going to park up here for a while. We're going to have some dinner. We're going to cook some dinner in the van, wait for it to go dark, and hopefully get some sightings of nightjars, which will be cool if we do.
Try and get them on camera.
Yeah, I'm going to try and get some footage of them so I can add them onto my list. Right, so stick with us and see you in a bit.
Kaylee set about making dinner, which was a bit of a take on a ratatouille. Nevertheless, it was delicious and it was a lovely situation to sit down and eat. That was until we started getting bitten by midges, so we had to seek refuge in the van and close all the windows and doors. After dinner, as it was getting dark, we set about waiting for the nightjars to come out. The first hunters to come out weren't the nightjars, but were these amazing bats. We stood watching them circling around the van, catching some of the midges that had been trying to bite us. They were very, very welcome. As it got darker, I walked a little further up the path to where I heard a lot of nightjars churring. Its noise is very distinctive, and before long I was surrounded by nightjars circling me. This was incredible and I feel very privileged to have witnessed this. And a great way to end the day. The following morning I woke up and took a little bit of walk in some woodland near Westleton Heath.
Morning folks, it's Sunday morning. Kaylee's still in the van. I've gone for a little walk in a little wooded area. Not much about. I can hear a lot of chiff-chaffs and blackcap singing, but there's not much else around.
Again, it was reasonably quiet. I did get a view of a very young Dartford warbler, and a little bit further up the path there was a skylark, but not many more extra species. So at this time it was time to head towards home and see what we could pick up en route. The first stop being Cambridgeshire.
Hey folks, we're at Smithy Fen in Cambridgeshire. We stopped off en route because yesterday somebody had seen a white stork here, and it's potentially been here for a few days. So we're really hoping it's still here. Stick with us, let's see if we can find it.
It didn't take long to see the white stork. It was a sizable bird and very imposing, walking around in the floodwater.
I'd say that was a pretty successful look at a white stork in a flooded field.
Quite an easy one, really.
Very easy. It was just wandering around.
Can't miss a big bird in the field.
Yeah, it was wandering around in some kind of floodwater in a field with a load of gulls and stuff. But a cool bird to see in the UK, and most importantly, a lifer for Kaylee. Woo! On to the next thing.
Following that success, we took a drive about half an hour north to RSPB Ooze Washes, where previously there had been night heron seen here. But on this occasion, we weren't very successful.
Hey, ooh, got my finger in the way. Hey folks, we've just nipped into Ooze Washes RSPB because there'd been a couple of night heron been seen there recently. Unfortunately, we didn't see them. There were a few of the little birds which I was able to add to our weekend list, which is good, and a load of swallows that were drinking at the water, which was good to see. Anyway, that is unfortunately the end of our video this time. We're going to put a poll on
So we want to
after
know
this. Go on.
where you lot want us to go next.
Yeah, we want you guys to choose the next place we do this challenge. I don't know how many birds we've seen. We'll tot it up at the end. I don't think
all British.
They weren't all British. I'm going to count them anyway. We'll have a look when we get home. I don't think it's as many as last time. But anyway, thanks for watching. Please like and please subscribe and press the notification bell. See you soon.